A vampire romance story. Written by Nini Peters. The flames licked at my ankles, and I knew I was going to die. The crowd surrounding the pyre roared with bloodthirsty approval as the fire crept higher, their faces twisted with hatred and fear. I could smell their terror beneath the smoke, sharp, acrid, mixing with the scent of my own burning flesh. My wrists were raw from the iron shackles that bound me to the stake, but the pain was nothing compared to the agony of trying to suppress the fire that wanted to explode from my very soul. "Burn the witch," someone screamed from the crowd. "Burn the fire demon." I wasn't a witch. I wasn't a demon. I was something else entirely, something I didn't understand, something that had destroyed half of Ravencrest in a single night of unleashed fury. The memories were fragments, scattered like ash in my mind. I remembered waking up in the rubble, surrounded by melted stone and twisted metal, with no recollection of how I'd gotten there or what I'd done. But the evidence was clear, an entire district reduced to slag and cinder, and me at the center of it all. The flames reached my knees now, and I bit back a scream. The irony wasn't lost on me, a creature of fire, dying by fire. But these weren't my flames. These were ordinary, mortal flames that hurt and burned and consumed without mercy. "Any last words, monster?" The executioner's voice cut through the crackling of the pyre. I lifted my head, meeting the eyes of the crowd with all the defiance I could muster. "I don't remember what I did," I said, my voice carrying over the square despite the roar of the flames. "But if I could remember, I'd do it again." The crowd's anger reached a fever pitch, and for a moment, I thought they might storm the pyre themselves. But then a chill swept through the square, so sudden and intense that frost began forming on the cobblestones despite the raging fire at my feet. The crowd fell silent. A figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the square, moving with predatory grace. He was tall, with pale skin that seemed to glow in the firelight and dark hair that fell across his forehead. His clothes were rich, midnight blue velvet and silver threads that caught the light like captured starlight. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. They were the color of fresh blood, and they were fixed on me with an intensity that made the flames seem cold by comparison. "Stop." His voice was soft, but it carried absolute authority. The executioner's hand froze on the torch he'd been about to use to stoke the flames higher. "Your Highness," the executioner stammered, "the sentence has been passed. The fire demon must." "The fire demon," the stranger interrupted, his red eyes never leaving mine, "carries the mark." He stepped closer to the pyre, and I could see the sharp points of fangs when he smiled. "She is mine." A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Even through my pain and fear, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with his supernatural cold. A vampire. Not just any vampire, royalty, by the way everyone was suddenly bowing and scraping. "Prince Lucien," the executioner said, his voice shaking. "Forgive me, but I don't understand." "What mark?" "The Council of Ravencrest has decreed." "The Council of Ravencrest," Lucien said with deadly calm, "does not supersede the ancient laws. She bears the mark of the old blood, the sign of the Fire Queen's return. She is mine by right of prophecy and blood." I wanted to protest, to demand answers, but the flames were climbing higher and the smoke was making it hard to breathe. My vision blurred, and I felt my consciousness slipping away. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Lucien's face, his red eyes filled with something that might have been hunger or might have been recognition. I woke up in a bed that was far too soft and far too cold. My first instinct was to scramble away, but my body felt heavy and strange. The burns on my legs had been treated with something that made my skin tingle, and I was wearing a nightgown of fine silk that definitely wasn't mine. The room around me was carved from black stone, with tall windows that showed nothing but darkness beyond. "You're awake." I spun toward the voice and found Lucien sitting in a chair beside the bed, still wearing those midnight blue velvets. In the dim light of the room, he looked even more otherworldly than he had in the square. His skin was so pale it seemed translucent, and those red eyes tracked my every movement like a predator watching prey. "Where am I?" My voice came out as a croak. Cold Spire Citadel, he said simply. My home. Why? The word came out sharper than I'd intended, but I was past caring about manners. Why did you save me? He leaned forward, and I caught a scent that was distinctly him, something like winter nights and old blood and dangerous secrets. Because you're important, Mira. More important than you know. How do you know my name? I know many things about you. I know you're an orphan, raised in the fire districts of Ravencrest. I know you have no memory of your parents or your early childhood. I know that 3 nights ago, you unleashed a power that should have been impossible for someone of your age and training. His eyes glittered in the darkness. And I know that you bear the mark of the Fire Queen. I looked down at my arms, searching for some sign or symbol I'd missed. I don't see any mark. Not on your skin, Lucien said softly. In your blood. In your power. In the way the flames bend to your will even when you're not trying to control them. As if summoned by his words, I felt the familiar warmth building in my chest, the fire that was always there, always ready to burst free. I clenched my fists and tried to push it down, but small flames flickered between my fingers anyway. Don't, Lucien said, and there was something almost gentle in his voice. Don't fight it. You'll only make it worse. It destroyed half a city, I said through gritted teeth. I can't control it. Because you're trying to suppress it instead of channeling it. Fire wants to be free, Mira. The more you cage it, the more violently it will escape. I stared at him, this vampire prince who spoke of fire like he understood it. Why do you care? Your people hate fire. They hate me. My people fear what they don't understand, Lucien corrected. And they're right to fear you. If you truly are the Fire Queen reborn, you have the power to end our empire. Then why save me? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the darkness beyond. Because I'm bound to you, he said quietly. By prophecy, by blood, by fate. I've been waiting for you for over a century, Mira. And now that you're here, neither of us can escape what comes next. The next few days passed in a blur of confusion and growing dread. Cold Spire Citadel was a maze of obsidian corridors and hidden chambers, populated by vampires who watched me with a mixture of fear and hunger. I was given free rein to explore, though I quickly discovered that free was relative. There were guards at every exit, and the few times I tried to leave, I found myself gently but firmly redirected back inside. Lucien was often absent, attending to what he called court business, but when he was present, he was an enigma. Sometimes he was cold and distant, speaking to me with the formal politeness of a captor addressing a valuable prisoner. Other times, there were moments of unexpected warmth, when he brought me books from his private library, or when he sat with me in the gardens and told me stories of the old days, before the wars between the supernatural kingdoms. It was during one of these conversations that I first learned about the prophecy that bound us. Tell me about the Fire Queen, I said one evening as we sat in his study. The room was lined with ancient books and artifacts, lit by candles that never seemed to burn down. If I'm supposed to be her reincarnation, shouldn't I know who she was? Lucien set down the wine glass he'd been holding, blood wine, I'd learned, though he was polite enough not to drink it in front of me. Her name was Seraphina, he said. She ruled the fire elementals 300 years ago, during the Great War between our peoples. What happened to her? She fell in love with a vampire, Lucien said simply. My ancestor, Prince Lucien. Their love was forbidden, of course. Fire and blood were never meant to mix. But they were bound by a prophecy, the same prophecy that binds us now. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the castle's perpetual cold. What did the prophecy say? Lucien's red eyes met mine, and I saw something like pain flash across his features. When fire and blood unite in love, the old order will burn away, and from the ashes, a new kingdom will rise. But the cost will be great, one will burn, and one will die, and only together can they be reborn. That's ominous. Prophecies usually are. He stood and moved to the window again, a habit I'd noticed he had when the conversation became too personal. Serafina and Dorian tried to fight it. They tried to stay apart, to deny their connection. But fate has a way of ensuring its will is done. What happened to them? They died, Lucien said quietly. Serafina burned herself out trying to save Dorian's life, and Dorian died protecting her from the combined armies of both their peoples. Their love story became legend, but their deaths nearly destroyed both kingdoms. I absorbed this information slowly, feeling the weight of it settle on my shoulders like a cloak. And you think I'm her reincarnation? I know you are. He turned back to me, and his expression was intense. The mark in your blood, the power you carry, the way you survived flames that should have killed you, it all points to the same conclusion. You're Serafina reborn, and I'm Dorian's descendant, I finished. Bound to repeat his mistakes. Bound to fulfill the prophecy, one way or another. That night, I dreamed of fire and blood. I saw a woman with flame-red hair standing in a field of ash, her hands wreathed in golden fire. She was beautiful and terrible, and when she turned to look at me, I saw my own face reflected in her eyes. You're not ready, she said, her voice like the crackling of burning wood. But you're running out of time. Ready for what? I asked, but she was already fading, dissolving into smoke and shadow. To remember, she whispered. To choose. To burn. I woke with a gasp, my hands wreathed in flames that I hadn't summoned. The silk nightgown was singed but not burned, and I realized with growing alarm that my control was slipping more each day. The fire inside me was growing stronger, more insistent, more dangerous. A soft knock at my door interrupted my panic. Mira? Are you all right? It was Lucien's voice, and I realized I must have cried out in my sleep. I'm fine, I called back, trying to extinguish the flames around my hands. But they wouldn't go out, and I could smell smoke beginning to fill the room. The door opened without invitation, and Lucien stepped inside. He took in the scene at a glance, the flames dancing around my hands, the smell of smoke, the panic in my eyes, and moved toward me without hesitation. Don't, I warned, backing away. I can't control it. I know. He kept coming, his movements slow and deliberate. That's why you need to stop trying. If I stop trying, I'll burn the whole castle down. No, he said softly, reaching out to touch my burning hands with his cold ones. You'll learn to dance with the fire instead of fighting it. The moment his skin touched mine, something extraordinary happened. The fire didn't burn him, instead, it seemed to recognize him, wrapping around his fingers like a living thing. I felt our connection snap into place, that mysterious bond the prophecy spoke of, and suddenly the flames weren't wild and dangerous. They were warm and welcoming, like coming home. How? I whispered. Blood calls to fire, Lucien said, his voice rough with emotion. Ice calls to flame. We balance each other, Mira. We complete each other. I looked into his red eyes and saw something I hadn't expected, not just desire or duty, but genuine affection. Maybe even love. This is dangerous, I said softly. Yes, he agreed. But some things are worth the risk. Before I could respond, he leaned down and kissed me. His lips were cold against mine, but they warmed under my touch, and I felt the fire in my blood sing with recognition. This was what the prophecy meant, what Serafina and Dorian had discovered, not just attraction, but a deep, mystical connection that transcended the boundaries between their peoples. When we broke apart, I was breathing hard, and the flames around my hands had settled into a gentle, steady glow. What happens now? I asked. Now, Lucien said, his forehead resting against mine, we face the consequences of defying fate. Those consequences came sooner than either of us expected. The next morning, I woke to the sound of shouting in the corridors and the clash of steel on steel. Lucien was already gone, but I could hear his voice echoing through the castle, giving orders in a tone that brooked no argument. I dressed quickly and made my way to the Great Hall, where I found chaos. Vampires in armor were rushing back and forth, and I could see blood on more than one face. At the center of it all stood Lucien, still in his midnight blue velvets but now with a sword at his side and a look of cold fury on his face. "What's happening?" I asked Elena, one of the vampire courtiers who had been assigned to watch over me. "Werewolves," she said, her voice tight with fear. "A pack of them, led by Alpha Kale. They're demanding the fire demon be turned over to them." "Why?" "Because you're not just a threat to us," she said grimly. "You're a threat to the entire supernatural world. The werewolves have formed an alliance with the witch covens. They want you dead before you can fulfill the prophecy." I felt the familiar heat building in my chest, but this time it wasn't panic, it was anger. "And what does Lucien say?" "He's refused, of course. You're under his protection." "But the werewolves aren't backing down, and neither are the witches. They've surrounded the castle." I looked across the hall to where Lucien stood, his red eyes scanning the room as he listened to reports from his scouts. When his gaze met mine, I saw determination there, but also something else, the fear. Not for himself, but for me. Making a decision that would change everything, I strode across the hall to his side. "Let me talk to them," I said. "Absolutely not." His voice was firm, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. "They want me," I pointed out. "This is my fight." "And you're under my protection," he replied. "I won't let them harm you. Even if it means war?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him weighing the options. Finally, he spoke. "If it comes to war, so be it. I won't hand you over to be executed." "And if I choose to go?" "Then I'll follow you," he said simply. "The prophecy binds us, Mira. Where you go, I go. Whatever you face, we face together." I felt something shift inside me at his words, not just the fire, but something deeper. A recognition, a connection that went beyond mere attraction or mystical bonds. This vampire prince, this man who had saved me from the flames and shown me kindness in a world that wanted me dead, was willing to risk everything for me. "Then we face them together," I said. The confrontation took place in the castle's main courtyard, under a sky that was heavy with storm clouds. The werewolves had indeed surrounded Cold Spire Citadel, their forms ranging from fully human to fully wolf, with every stage in between. At their head stood Alpha Kale, a man with silver hair and eyes like molten gold, who radiated power and barely contained violence. Beside him stood a woman I recognized as Morgana, the High Witch of the Eastern Covens. She was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way, with platinum hair and eyes like ice. Her power was different from mine, cold where mine was warm, controlled where mine was wild. "Prince Lucien," Kale said, his voice carrying the roughness of someone who was more comfortable in wolf form than human. "We've come for the fire demon. Turn her over, and we'll leave in peace." "Her name is Mira," Lucien replied coldly. "And she's under my protection." "Your protection?" Morgana laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You're harboring the reincarnation of the Fire Queen, the one prophesied to destroy the balance between our peoples. Do you have any idea what you're risking?" "I know exactly what I'm risking," Lucien said. "The question is, do you know what you're starting?" I stepped forward, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on me. "I'm right here," I said. "If you want to talk about me, talk to me." Kale's golden eyes fixed on me with predatory intensity. "You're the one who burned half of Ravencrest." "I am." There was no point in denying it. "Do you remember doing it?" I hesitated. "No. But I don't deny it happened." "And do you remember who you were before?" Morgana asked, her ice blue eyes searching my face. "Do you remember being Seraphina?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I have dreams. Fragments. But I don't remember being her." "The memories will come," Morgana said grimly. And when they do, you'll remember the power she wielded. The destruction she caused. The war she started. She also loved a vampire, I said quietly. And that love nearly brought peace between our peoples. That love destroyed them both, Kale snarled. And it will destroy you too, if you're foolish enough to repeat her mistakes. Maybe, I said. But that's my choice to make. Not when your choices affect the entire supernatural world, Morgana replied. The prophecy speaks of burning away the old order, Mira. Do you understand what that means? It means the death of thousands, maybe millions, as the established kingdoms crumble and burn. I felt the fire stirring in my chest, responding to my growing anger. And do you understand what it means to deny the prophecy? To kill me here and now? It means peace, Kale said. It means cowardice, I shot back. It means letting fear rule your choices instead of hope. Hope. Morgana's voice was sharp with disbelief. You call the destruction of everything we've built hope? I call the chance for something better hope, I said. The old order you're so desperate to protect, what has it given us? Centuries of war, of fear, of hatred between peoples who could be allies instead of enemies. Maybe it's time for something new. And maybe, a new voice said from the castle entrance, it's time for the prophecy to be fulfilled. We all turned to see who had spoken, and I felt my breath catch. Standing in the doorway was an old woman, bent with age but radiating power that made even the Alpha and the High Witch step back. Her hair was white as snow, but her eyes were the same flame red as mine had been in my dreams. Grandmother Ember, Lucien said, his voice filled with surprise and something like fear. I thought you were dead. I've been waiting, the old woman said, her voice carrying despite her apparent frailty. Waiting for the right time, the right place, the right choice. She looked directly at me. Waiting for you, child. Who are you? I asked, though part of me already knew. I am Ember, the last of the fire oracles, she said. I was Seraphina's teacher, her guide, her friend. And I watched her die for love. The courtyard was silent except for the sound of wind through the castle's towers. Even the werewolves had stopped their restless movement, sensing that something momentous was about to happen. You're here to stop me, I said. It wasn't a question. I'm here to offer you a choice, Ember replied. The same choice I offered Seraphina 300 years ago. You can embrace the prophecy, accept your power and your fate, and watch the world burn and be reborn. Or you can choose to sacrifice yourself, to burn out your own fire, and preserve the world as it is. And if I choose the prophecy? Then you and Prince Lucien will be bonded by blood and fire, and together you'll have the power to reshape the supernatural world. But the cost will be great, as the prophecy says, one will burn, and one will die, and only together can you be reborn. And if I choose sacrifice? Then you'll die, your fire will be extinguished forever, and the old order will continue. There will be no more fire queens, no more prophecies, no more threat to the established kingdoms. I looked around the courtyard, taking in the faces of everyone present. Kale and Morgana, watching me with hope that I would choose death. The vampires of Lucien's court, torn between fear of what I might become and loyalty to their prince. Elena and the other courtiers who had shown me kindness despite their fear. And Lucien, his red eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my heart race. I could see the conflict in his face, his duty to his people warring with his feelings for me, his desire to protect me fighting with his knowledge of what the prophecy demanded. What did Seraphina choose? I asked Ember. She chose love, the old woman said softly. She chose to risk everything for the chance of something better. And she died for it. But their love story didn't end with their deaths, did it? I said, realization dawning. If I'm her reincarnation, and Lucien is bound to me the way Dorian was bound to her, then death wasn't the end. It was just a pause. Ember smiled for the first time since she'd appeared. Very good, child. You're beginning to understand. Understand what? Kale demanded. I turned to face him, and I felt the fire inside me settle into something steady and sure. That the prophecy isn't about destruction, I said. It's about transformation. The old order burning away doesn't mean the destruction of our peoples, it means the destruction of the barriers between them. That's impossible, Morgana said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? I looked at Lucien, and he stepped forward to take my hand. The moment our skin touched, I felt our connection flare to life, fire and ice, blood and flame, two halves of a greater whole. Look at us. A vampire prince and a fire elemental, natural enemies, and yet we complete each other, Lucien finished, his voice soft but carrying clearly across the courtyard. The prophecy speaks of love conquering ancient hatred, I continued. Of fire and blood uniting to create something new. What if that's not a threat to be feared, but a promise to be embraced? Pretty words, Kale said, but his golden eyes were thoughtful. But what guarantee do we have that you won't become another Seraphina? That your power won't consume everything in its path? You don't, I said honestly. But you have my word that I'll try to be better than she was. That I'll learn from her mistakes. And you have mine, Lucien added, that I'll help her. That we'll face whatever comes together. Ember stepped forward, her ancient eyes moving between us. The choice is yours, child. But choose quickly, I can feel the power building in you. Soon, it will be too strong to contain, and the choice will be made for you. She was right. I could feel the fire inside me growing, responding to the emotional intensity of the moment. But this time, instead of trying to suppress it, I let it flow through me. I felt it reach out, connecting with Lucien's cold vampire nature, and to my amazement, I felt him respond. Not with fear or pain, but with acceptance. I choose the prophecy, I said, my voice ringing clear across the courtyard. I choose love over fear, hope over despair, transformation over stagnation. And I choose to trust that together, we can build something better than what came before. The words had barely left my lips when the change began. Fire erupted from my skin, but instead of burning everything around me, it danced and swirled in patterns of incredible beauty. Lucien's vampire nature responded, and I felt his power merge with mine, ice and fire, creating something entirely new. The transformation was unlike anything I could have imagined. I felt my consciousness expand, felt Seraphina's memories flooding back, not just her power, but her wisdom, her mistakes, her love for Dorian. And through our bond, I felt Lucien experiencing the same awakening, becoming not just himself but the heir to Dorian's legacy as well. When the light faded, I found myself standing in a circle of scorched earth, but nothing else had been damaged. The fire had burned away only the barriers between us. I could feel the fear and hatred that had separated the supernatural peoples for centuries dissolving like smoke. It's done, Ember said, her voice filled with satisfaction. The prophecy is fulfilled. What happens now? I asked, my voice different, stronger, more confident. Now, Lucien said, his red eyes now flecked with gold that matched the flames in mine, we build a new world. The months that followed were not easy. There were those among all the supernatural peoples who resisted the changes, who preferred the old ways of fear and separation. But for every voice raised in opposition, there were two more speaking in favor of the new order we were building. Kale became one of our strongest allies, his werewolf pack serving as ambassadors between the various supernatural communities. Morgana proved more difficult to convince, but even she eventually came to see the wisdom in unity over division. The new kingdom we built was unlike anything that had come before. Vampires, werewolves, fire elementals, witches, and dozens of other supernatural peoples worked together, their differences becoming strengths rather than sources of conflict. Lucien and I ruled together, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. The prophecy had spoken truly, we had burned and died, but we had also been reborn, transformed into something greater than either of us could have been alone. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between the demands of leadership and the challenges of building a new world, I would remember that night in the courtyard when I had chosen love over fear. It had been the most important decision of my life, and I had never regretted it. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd chosen differently? Lucien asked me one evening as we stood on the balcony of our shared chamber, looking out over the city we'd built together. No, I said without hesitation. This is where we belong. This is what we were meant to build. He smiled and pulled me closer, his cold skin warming under my touch. I love you, Mira. In this life and whatever comes after. I love you too, I replied, feeling the truth of it in every fiber of my being. Fire and blood, ice and flame, forever. Below us, the city sparkled with lights both magical and mundane, a testament to what could be achieved when ancient enemies chose to become allies instead. It wasn't perfect, no kingdom ever was, but it was ours, built on love and hope instead of fear and hatred. The prophecy had been fulfilled, the old order had burned away, and from the ashes, something beautiful had risen. And as I stood there in Lucien's arms, watching our people, all our people, going about their lives in peace, I knew that every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of fear and uncertainty had been worth it. The fire in my blood sang with contentment, and I knew that this was only the beginning of our story. There would be challenges ahead, new threats to face, new opportunities to seize. But whatever came, we would face it together, as we always had, as we always would. Fire and blood, united at last. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to our channel for more captivating audiobook stories that will transport you to worlds beyond imagination. Your support means everything to creators like us who are passionate about bringing these magical stories to life. Hit that like button if this story touched your heart, share it with fellow lovers of supernatural romance, and let us know in the comments what kind of mystical adventure you'd like to hear next.